Hey guys, so in this video, I want to talk about temporal forces and paradox rift and maybe a topic of discussion that some people aren't looking at. We all know that a lot of IR cards are popping off right now. For example, you have the Drowsy from SV Base being one of the big ones over the past couple weeks. And today I want to look at all the sets in Scarlet and Violet era up to Surging Sparks, just because Prismatic is so new. And I want to look at the illustration rares, the top 10 of them in each set, and how percentage-wise they've moved over the past 3 months, and compare that to the illustration and special illustration rare Paradox Pokemon from Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces. And the reason I want to do this, if you can see on screen, is that they really haven't done too well over the past 3 months. And I personally like a lot of these illustrations and artwork, so I think like some of these are probably actually slept on and could be higher, at least in my opinion. And with people looking to pump something new every single week, I feel like it's only a matter of time before someone just tries to pump these again and pick them up and push a couple of the top cards to the moon. And if that happens, I mean, we really could see Temporal Forces booster boxes and Paradox Rift kind of move up a level. I think both these are still kind of mid-tier. I'd say Temporal Forces in terms of booster box sets is probably fourth best. Twilight Masquerade, Surging Sparks, and Paldea all being above it. Paradox Rift, probably fifth. I mean, some people might put Paradox above Temporal, but I think they're both kind of, mid-tier sets right now and fairly close. But if that happens, you could get to a point where the argument for them being better than even something like Twilight Masquerade or, Paldea Evolve becomes more relevant. Even if that is a bit of a stretch. But a couple things to explain before we get too deep into the data, which isn't, it's nothing too crazy, but I don't think this is the best way to look at it. I couldn't really figure out a better way. So if you guys know of a better way, let me know in the comments down below. Basically what I did is I took every set. I also included the specialty sets as well, just to see how the special illustration rares have been moving over the past 3 months in terms of ROI. This is only the top 10 cards in each set. And this is kind of where a bit of the issue is. So a set like Paldea Evolved right now or SV Base, a lot of those, well, Paldea Evolved outside the Magikarp, I guess, but it's having issues now with a lot of these newer cards like the Excalibur, which is like the second or third highest card now in the set, and then the Artibax, and then the Frigibax. I think this is a whole line, and it's done by the same artist as the guy who did Drowsy. So a lot of these cards have just ballooned over the past like 2 days, 3 days, and that's kind of throwing the data off a bit for Paldea Evolved. Obsidian Flames never really had any high dollar illustration or special illustration rare cards outside the Charizard. So a lot of those ones that were like, $5, $6 over the past 3 months have now become top 10 special illustration rare cards. And they've seen like huge percentage gains, even though the raw number isn't that high, right? Like if it goes from $5 to $15, that's a 200% return. So, uh, ROI in terms of percentage on some of these cards probably wasn't the best way to measure it. But I think when you look at it compared to, the Paradox Pokemon, it is quite obvious that these have underperformed the overall market. And yeah, so I mean, starting off, you can see that the top 10 cards, special illustration rares from SC Base, up 132.25% over the past 3 months. Paldea Evolved, again, 196%. A lot of that is due not just to the Magikarp up a bit, but mainly this Excalibur, which is up 450%, the Artibax, which is up 756%, and then the Frigibax up 313.5%. And again, these are all done by the same artist that drew the Drowsy. So, there you go. That's a large reason for that. Obsidian Flames up 251.4%. One of the biggest movers there is the Houndour, up 918%. So that's a very big one as well. Where are these from? Obsidian Flames, the Bellabolt also is up 487, almost 488%. Next, Paradox Rift. So again, this is where things get a little interesting. The non-Paradox Pokemon, the top 10 SIR and IR cards that are not Paradox, so the Groudon, the Altaria, etc., those are up 107% over the past 3 months, whereas the Paradox Pokemon are only up 60.02%. And again, the Paradox Pokemon and Paradox Rift, you only have 8 of them that are special illustration or illustration rare cards. In Temporal Forces, there's actually only 6 SIR or IR cards. They're all SIRs of Paradox Pokemon. So we couldn't do the top 10, but I just took all of them in that set. And 60.02%, a lot of that's actually inflated. So I put over here, you can see the top 2 cards. The Groudon and Altaria, so the non-Paradox ones, are up 96%, so pretty close to the average. The Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant are only up 37.7%, which is much lower than 60%. The reason why it's inflated in Paradox Rift is the Brute Bonnet is up 222%. And this artist is the same person who did the Drowsy, wherever it is over here, and these new Paldea Evolves cards that are popping off right now. So that's kind of thrown off the data a tiny bit there. But you can see, again, like the top Paradox Pokemon well underperforming. When we look at Temporal Forces, the non-Paradox ones are up 124%. So that's going to be your Ghastly, your Morty's Conviction. A couple trainer cards were in there as well, like the Bianca. I think maybe even Airy was top 10 non-SAR. And then when you look at the Paradox ones, you have the Iron Crown, the Iron Boulder, Iron Leaves, which is a great card. And then you have the 3 dogs, the Raging Bolt EX. Over here, you have the Walking Wake, and then you have the Gouging Fire right beside it. So there you go. And then just to finally end off this list real fast, Twilight Masquerade, non-Paradox Pokemon. All the other sets, again, are non-Paradox. They don't have Paradox SIRs or IRs. Up 50.56%. Stellar Crown, 68.9% almost. Surging Sparks, 31.23%. 151 up 34.37%, and then Shrouded Fable up 70.2%. The reason I think 151, Surging Sparks, and Twilight Masquerade are a bit lower, obviously the Greninja is just a very expensive card, so that played a fairly large factor in this. And then with 151, the Charizard, the Blastoise, the Venusaur, all these cards were already fairly expensive, so it's not surprising we don't see a higher raw percentage. Like with the earlier sets where a lot of those cards were, $5 and they doubled or tripled and brought the average up. So again, maybe not the best way to look at this. But when you are looking at this, it's clear Temporal Forces, special illustration rares just haven't got a lot of love, especially the top ones, the Raging Bolt and Iron Crown, average combined only up 14.57% over the past 3 months, whereas the Ghastly, the Morty's Conviction, up 76%. And the Groudon and Altaria, mainly the Altaria, is actually pushing that number a lot higher, up almost 96%. So I do think some of these cards, like the Raging Bolt, like the Walking Wake, like, even Gouging Fire, sure. The Iron Crown, I mean, we've seen this get pumped a few times, actually. If you go look at the past 12 months, right out the gate, this card really pumped up there. Came back down. We saw another spike up into the 80s in June. Came back down again, and then just mid-December, early December, this card was back up to $80. Quickly, got dumped again. I imagine we're going to see another pump eventually on the Iron Crown. It seems like, every few months someone is trying to make a play on that. But, long term, like, again, maybe it's bias. I really like the Raging Bolt EX. I like the artwork. I know the Pokemon looks funky, really long neck. And again, they're not people's favorite Pokemon. They're also playable, I believe, still, the Raging Bolt, and then maybe even the Walking Wake and Gouging Fire. So that might be bringing the value up, and maybe these cards are just, worse than I think they are. But it really wouldn't surprise me if we see a move eventually on the Raging Bolt, the Iron Crown, the Iron Boulder. No, where's Iron Leaves over here? I really like this artwork. I think it's great, and it's under $40 right now for an SIR. The pull rates on Temporal Forces are what for an SIR? Like 1 out of 850-ish, something like that. So pretty hard to pull these. I mean, not the most difficult to get a specific SIR, but 1 out of every 855 for a specific one, still pretty considerable. So it really wouldn't surprise me if we eventually see some of these cards get pumped. I mean, come on, like the Drowsy got pumped, guys, out of nowhere. And now we're seeing basically any card that artist drew go to the moon, even if it's Baxcalibur, right? Like this guy's, like 3 months ago, this was a sub $10 card. It's now going for over $50. Same with, it's pre-evolutions, I guess you could say. It's just, some of these are ridiculous. And again, like I understand a lot of these Paradox Pokemon aren't fan favorite. Brute Bonnet is, getting a pump just because of the artist. The Iron Valiant, like again, this is, sub $40. Not a fan favorite. I still think it's a really cool one. Like I think it should probably be higher. Some of these though, like Sandy Shocks, Iron Hands. Both of these were playable cards at one point. Not as cool. I get it. Iron Jugulus. Again, like not a super cool Pokemon that anyone probably cares about. This one's actually up a fair amount though, up 92.58% over the past 3 months. The Iron Moth, again, same sort of thing, like not a really interesting Pokemon, and Slitherwing as well is very irrelevant. But I do think the top dogs like Raging Bolt, your Iron Crown, your Iron Leaves, wherever it is, like some of these could potentially see increases. Even Walking Wake, like someone at some point is going to look at this data, see that these haven't been moving. Maybe there's only a few on the market at a certain point. Like it's just a matter of time, I imagine, in this market. You guys let me know down below though what you think. It's clear a lot of these illustration rares are just going crazy, and it doesn't even seem like it's slowing down at this point, which is wild. Every new day there's something going on out there. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.